Hi folks, it's Andy. I hope you're having a fantastic day. Welcome to this week's Kendo Rant. We've got loads of fantastic questions for you today. We'll get to them in just a moment, but don't forget, before we start, like, share, subscribe, and most importantly, if you do like the videos that I put out, make sure you shop at KendoStar.com. That's my website, of course, that produces amazing, fantastic Kendo equipment. So let's get into these questions. I have some self-made uchikamidai, and I have improvised several striking targets around the house, much to the desperation of my girlfriend and the joy of the kittens. Any tips on stuff we can strike at home? Any KendoStar items that could be helpful for this? So an uchikamidai is like the like the striking practice dummy. But yeah, we can get you one of those if you want one, but they're pretty expensive. I don't have them on the website, even though I can get them, because in my experience, like, people buy them and then never use them. So I don't think they're an amazing product for like individuals. That they're made in Japan generally for like schools and stuff. In terms of alternatives, what you could do is like get a piece of like foam, I don't know what you would have in your country, but like piping insulation foam you get from a hardware store, the sort of thing that looks like a pool noodle, that sort of thing. Attach it to the back of a chair or something like that, I guess you could do. Or something that was head height, I guess. Or you could tie your burger to something. Something like that. I don't know. It's kind of hard to say, isn't it? Yeah, I don't have a massive. It's not something I do myself. Actually, in all honesty, I don't have an uchikamidai myself, and I don't have that sort of thing. The sort of solo practice I tend to focus on is more suburi related stuff, though. Given the past 12 months has seen a lot more of that than I would normally expect in my regular curriculum. So yeah, sorry I can't be much more help. Next one, what are your predictions for the upcoming All Japan Kendo Championships? Any predictions or favourite players? So I did a video about this the other day. I posted it as a reply to your comments. If you haven't seen that, go and watch that video where I've taken you through sort of the All Japan Kendo Championships tournament trees, both the women's and the men's, separate tournaments, and sort of picked up a few players and introduced them and sort of let you know who my favourites are. Who are my predictions? My predictions, I think in the women's, Onishi Nanami is probably going to do quite well from Fukui, and I'd really like to see what was she called? Off the top of my head, she changed her name. Miyaji Sayako. She used to be called Sugimoto. I'd like to see her do really well, because she's like a superstar. Former world champion, similar age to me, so it'd be great to see. Like I say, I'm supporting my generation. But yeah, that'd be good. In the men's, I can imagine players like Matsuzaki Kenshiro, who came second last time, Hoshiko Keita, as well, former Japanese team member. I say former, there isn't a Japanese team at the minute because the world's cancelled, but he was in the world last time as the youngest male player. Hayashida, is it? Kyohei, the guy, he was in the Japanese team as well, I think. He's been in the tournament quite a few times as well. But who are there's Murakami Raita as well from Osaka. He's got awesome kendo. Really like his matches, so it'd be great to see how he does. But my real pick, the one I really want to win, is Hashimoto Keiichi. Again, similar age to me. I think he's around 40. So a couple of years older than me. But he's like a regular company worker. Amazing, fantastic, beautiful kendo. He's been in this tournament like loads of times as well. Like when the police were in it as well. So he is an All Japan level player. He won the All Japan 7th Dan Championships. One of the best players in the world, in my opinion. So I'm really looking forward to his matches, and I want him to win. Next one. Hi Andy, I'm curious, why is it that when doing Hidari Jodan, we generally hold our shinai at an angle, as in the kisaki is to our right instead of in the middle? I'm aware of it being done in Itoryu Kenjutsu styles, but it seems very rare. While it's in Kendo, it's the norm. So Hidari Jodan's left Jodan. It's the one that you see in the first Kendo kata that Uchitachi does it, and also it's the other reasonably popular kamae after Chudan no kamae. So it's where you hold the sword over the head, and yes, it's at an angle, and that's because when you in Kendo, I don't know anything about Kenjutsu, so I'm not going to talk about its context in Kenjutsu because it's not really relevant to me because I don't know anything about it. But what I do know about is Kendo, so I can talk about that. And in Kendo, when you're in left Jodan, you stand in a kind of what's called hanmi position, where your body isn't straight on, your hips aren't straight on, and your feet aren't straight on. They're pointed out 45 degrees to your right. And that brings the sword this way, and that makes for a more practical application of the left arm, because what you're mainly looking for is one-handed katate waza, which have much more reach, and it's a much more aggressive, threatening kamae, and you're looking to attack from a longer range for the most part. So you need that long reach, and the way you make a strike, the way you move your body with the katate waza, comes from this hanmi position, and essentially, if you were to put your hands straight, you make this sort of position with your wrist, which is wrong. You can't do the proper katate waza. All right, the way that you do the katate waza is from your shoulder, same as with the two-handed waza actually. So it is for the mechanics of how you execute waza from Jodan, and that's the reason why we do that. Okay. It's not for the sake of it, and it's not for appearance. It has a practical reason. Hello Andy, I have a knee injury and I can't do Sonkyo properly. What is the correct way to do it then? I've seen people kneeling, but in my case I can't even do that at the moment. Is it okay just to bow? In an exam, is it necessary to let the judges know the condition? Thanks a lot. Okay, so this is not an uncommon problem. Okay, it's not an uncommon problem, so don't worry about it too much. All right, if you can't do Sonkyo, there is a way to do the kind of like sort of standing Sonkyo, where you essentially just do you almost go down to Gedan as your partner does Sonkyo. So you follow them just with the tip of the shinai. So you just sort of show down that way. You don't need to bow or anything. You can do, but you don't necessarily need to. And so you'd raise it down. Lower it down to like a Gedan posture position. So it's even with theirs as they go to Sonkyo, and then raise it back up to Chudan as they stand up. Is the way that works. And in terms of an exam, I mean, if you have the opportunity to let the judges or the panel know, like when you're registering or something, it won't do any harm to do that. It's probably for the best. I think if I was on a grading panel and I didn't know that, you had a knee injury and I saw you doing the etiquette the way I just described, I just assumed that it was because of a knee problem and I wouldn't hold it against you. But I'm not everybody, so some people might, if you get the chance to just put a word in, then it's probably worth it. Hi Andy, I have a question regarding bogus stitching, specifically the cross stitch type. I understand that it mimics the hand stitch, however, are there extra benefits compared to regular machine stitching? For example, comparing 6mm cross pitch to 6mm regular pitch, does the cross pitch offer supple futon? Is it softer? Is it purely for aesthetics? Thank you. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is you need to go and watch my complete guide to Kendo Boga, because it's a webinar. It's about an hour long, but you'll definitely learn a lot from it. I talk about this point in that specifically. So what you're talking about is the sort of cross pitch or cross stitch type stitching. There's lots of names for it. Koshizashi is another one. Jujizashi is another one. There's loads of different ways they call it. But what it means is normally when they put the stitching in the bogu, it runs horizontally across the futon, all right, the padding. Yeah, and when you see millimeters listed, like this bogu is 6mm or 10mm or 3mm, whatever, it refers to the interval between the rows of stitching. Okay, now the more the more rows of stitching there are, or the closer that gap is, effectively the futon tends to get a bit thinner and it tends to get a bit stiffer, all right, and it offers a little bit less protection, but it offers a bit more durability because those threads offer a little bit more protection against the cloth that it's made from sort of rubbing away. So you sort of trade off comfort and protection for durability, and also the stiffer futon of the tighter stitching is a bit easier to mold into a nice shape. So generally what you find is lots of well, not lots of, unfortunately, I don't know why more don't, but if you look at like the KendoStar sets, for example, the way I've designed them, you'll find that it's got wider stitching on the parts where you're going to get hit. Things like the Vanguard set or the Vanguard Myrmidon, we use very wide stitching where you're going to receive the strikes on the kote on the men, or where you want it to be soft, like on the obi of the tare. But then on the men dare, the wings, we'll use a tighter stitching where it rubs against your shoulders and you want to mold it a bit and you don't need the cushioning so much. So we'll combine different types of stitching on the same bogu set. Now, to come back to your question here, the cross-pitch type is where there's not just horizontal rows of stitching, but they go in vertically as well. And what this allows us to do, now we use this on a couple of our bogu sets. We use it on the Kamui bogu set, and we use it on the Kaisei bogu set. And what it essentially lets us do is it allows us to put double the amount of stitches in without crowding the futon with stitches. So effectively you get a durability that's somewhat similar to say if it's like the Kaisei set is a 6mm what do you call it, cross pitch type, but it has because it's got the vertical stitches as well, it's got almost double the stitches in. It's not double the stitches because the width isn't the same as the length, but you get the idea. So the durability is almost doubled, but there's still big intervals. So you get these squares instead of rows of cushions. So you still get the same size cushions all over the futon. So it's not exactly as the same protection offered as like a normal 6mm set, because the extra stitches do take some of that thickness out of it, but it's kind of a way of drawing between the two where you can still get a boost for the durability whilst retaining some of that cushioning and protection, and also it does look cool. And then the last thing is, because if you've got those extra stitches, it helps with that sort of moldability. So it allows us to, like on the mendare for example, retain that appearance but get that kind of moldability in it, and of course that durability where it's going to rub against your shoulders and stuff like that. So that's the benefit of it. All right, it's not that it's the best one. Everything's a trade-off. All right, there's no sort of perfect solution. Everything's a trade-off with other aspects, whether it's durability, comfort, protection, or cost. Yeah, but it's another thing that you can throw in there to help with that sort of balance. Okay, so that's where that is. Next one. Hi Andy, an unusual question. What skills would one need to make a DIY bogu set? I understand there are special materials used that aren't available everywhere, but as we're currently locked down and I'm sure many people have decided to learn a new skill or two, I'm wondering what all the skills must craftsmen learn to be able to finish a set. In that regard, I'm also referring to some of the previous Kendo rants where you mentioned that some of the bogu makers were women on maternity leave or prisoners. How hard is it to make a set actually with all the materials provided? Thanks. Okay, so just a quick correction there. It's not that they're women on maternity leave. They're like, it's not that they're on maternity leave. Lots of the bogu makers are women who are working like part-time because they're like housewives or something. It's a common theme in Asia, in Japan and stuff, where sort of the women will still mainly be the sort of housewife, and they might have a part-time job. And there's a lot of women that do that work in sort of Borg factories, especially in Japan. So, right. Now, it's an interesting question, because essentially some aspects of making the Borgo is effectively quite simple in theory, but put into practice, yeah, not so much. There's not really any craftsmen that I know of that make the entire Borgo set themselves just on their own. So that's one thing. Without a production line, making a set of Borgo is not an easy task. Like, it's not something you can pick up as a hobby. I mean, people do. I know people that like, some people like, they'll get into like making or fixing kote, or even making the kote. The kote is, like a small bit. But if you're talking about like making a full set of Borgo, like, if you're going to make a machine stitch set, you're going to need an industrial grade sewing machine for a start. Yeah, and if you're going to hand stitch the futon, that's fine. That's going to take a long time. And the difficulty with the hand stitching is the concept of doing it is simple, just like the concept of making a brick wall is quite simple. Yeah, you get your bricks, you apply your cement, and you stack them on top of each other. Doing it properly and neatly, that's a whole different thing. Now, that's just in regards to stitching the futon. If you're talking about, then you've got to think about how it goes together, especially the men kumi, the putting the men together is a very complicated, difficult process. I don't know how to do it myself. I understand the essential mechanism of how the process works. I understand enough of that. I spent enough time with the craftsman to understand that, but obviously I couldn't do it myself. I've learned some aspects. I can put a door together and stuff like that. It's not so hard, but I mean, really, despite the sort of concept of a lot of this stuff is reasonably straightforward, like without a production facility and some not only access to reasonably difficult to acquire materials, but also equipment, making a set of Borgo on your own that's safe to use, yeah, it's not going to be an easy thing, to be honest. So yeah, even though I said that it was women that are working part-time whilst being a housewife, that's not degrading the work they do. They're still professionals in what they do. It's just that they do it part-time. It's not like the reason I think I was talking about that, and about the prison's a bit different, to be honest. But the reason I was talking about that is because it's just a little bit different to how it's sometimes portrayed as an industry. That it's like this sort of master craftsman, and then this sort of they're sort of apprentices coming through and stuff like that. It's just not like that for the most part. There is an element of that in some areas of it, but just for the whole thing, a lot of it is ladies that are good with sewing machines, if that makes sense. Prison is a different kettle of fish. I mean, that's people that are doing it as sort of rehabilitative measures in prison. I don't think it happens so much anymore, and the quality of what they make is rubbish. So next one, dear Andy, what do I have to do to pass Jodan? Okay, so I replied to this in the comments. You have to do the same thing you did to get Jodan, just against someone that's better. All right, I posted the video about how to pass Jodan. Essentially, it's about not just attacking from your own volition, making sure that you attacking at good opportunities, and for the waza that you're selecting have the good rationale. Next one. Hi Andy, do you have any tips on identifying and creating opportunities to strike? A lot of the time, Motodachi give really obvious tells, but for lower level players, what would you say we should watch for to strike? All right. For lower level players, you shouldn't worry about too much this sort of thing. For lower level players, when you're doing keiko with the senior, you should just try to make attacks with Kikentai no Ichi and full stemi. So throw everything with full spirit. Don't worry about like whether you can win. That isn't the purpose of your keiko. You will not get much better at kendo if you do that. You'll go down a really difficult and winding path that'll take you all sorts of weird directions. Trust me, I've been there, I've done it. It doesn't work. So yeah, in terms of identifying and creating opportunities to strike, I've made a video about semi. It's a few years old now, I get that, but it is, you know, essentially to create an opportunity to strike is to, put simply, it's to elicit a reaction from your opponent through either threatening that you will strike or allowing them to believe that they have a chance to strike, is essentially it in a nutshell. Of course, it's a much more complicated topic and subject than that, but you know, I mean, well, if you are lower level, like if you're under sort of second dan, then for the time being, I'd rather you think about like making strikes with Kikentai no Ichi that satisfy the criteria of Yuko Datotsu, the valid strikes, with full commitment to the strike. All right. There have been some recent promotions by some other suppliers of kote. Do we have to talk about other suppliers? They have a multitude of colours on the palm of the kote. Are these acceptable by the AJKF and FIK? Also, are different coloured other than navy blue men and door hemo allowed? I've seen pics of these variations. So, all right. Yeah, I know what you're talking about, like having the different coloured leather on the palms. It's easy enough to do. We could do it for you if you wanted to. I don't recommend it, if I'm honest. There's no rules against it in the All Japan Kendo Federation or International Kendo Federation. Nothing specifies what colour the kote palms must be. I mean, those sort of products, they're really for kids, aren't they? That's what they're aimed at. And I think what will probably, in Japan, it wouldn't surprise me if that sort of product got popular. I don't think it is, but if it got popular, it wouldn't surprise me if we saw some sort of ruling from the children's federations, like the junior high school federation or something like that probably banned them, because they do that all the time. Like they used to be like, you used to be able to get pink kendogi and hakuman, red ones and blue ones, and like sky blue color ones and stuff like that. And like as soon as kids started showing up to tournaments with those on, they were crossed off the list. Not from the All Japan Kendo Federation, from like the school federations and stuff like that. They don't like that sort of thing. They don't want kendo to be that sort of sports type thing. I don't know. I'm sort of in two minds about it myself. Whether, I mean, I don't care about it that much, but about the Hemo, no, there's no rules against it either. We have a couple of different coloured Hemo for sale on KendoStar. We've got purple ones, I think. We can get all the different coloured ones as well. Listen, right, I'm going to say this as somebody that... right, okay, let's start this again. I should probably cut this, but I'm not going to. Coloured Hemo have a very limited number of useful applications, all right? They can be good for teams. They can be good for separating visually sort of grades or abilities or ages, stuff like that. Individuals, it's... Now, I'm going to tell you this as somebody that did this, all right? When I was younger and I thought I was cool, I used to wear Hemo for a while that weren't navy, all right? It didn't look as cool as I thought it did, all right? I thought I was really cool. I wasn't. All right, but if you want to be that guy like I was, no problem. I'll help you out. Drop me an email. Hi, Andy. I want to ask if big strikes are ever effective during Shiai. If so, can you describe when you do big strikes? However, whenever I do Jigeko, I find it impossible to make a Yuko Dototsu with big strikes, since it always ended up being blocked or dodged. But as my Shodan exam approaches, I find it concerning that I can't connect with big strikes. Thanks. Big strikes, in general, big strikes are not for Jigeko or for Jitsugi or for Tachiai. They're not for that. All right? That's not why we practice big strikes. And when I say big strikes, I mean where you lift the shinai over your head like this when we do in Suburi or Uchikomi or Kirikaishi. All right, they are to facilitate you learning how to strike properly. All right, striking properly is what many people refer to as a small strike. But you're not required to lift the shinai over your head to strike to pass gradings. There's a controversial take. I'm sure there's people that disagree with me, but that's how they do it in Japan. You don't have to make these massive strikes, all right? Now, you do see that in, like, kids' Q gradings, because most kids' Q gradings, you know, they're like 7 years old. So, you know, that's all they've learned so far, because they're still learning the basics. But what you'll find is, like I say, of course, your large strikes aren't going to connect. There are exceptions, all right? So before someone says, oh, well, I once scored kote nuki men by lifting my shinai over my head. Of course there are exceptions, all right? Of course there are. But in general, all right, large strikes are not for competitive use. And when I say competitive, I don't mean tournaments. I mean in a situation where you and your opponent are competing with each other to make valid strikes on each other. So yeah, to pass Jodan, you need to be able to make small strikes as well as large ones. To be honest, use your large ones in your kirikaishi, your uchikomi, and your suburi. All right. You use your real strikes are not lifting the shinai over your head. Of course, you'll never make contact. Hi Andy, I was wondering how Kendo has developed into using a pushing cut such as Katori Shintoryu, but the kata are using a pulling cut like that of Itoryu. Why are they not the same? Thanks. You did it. You asked about Kenjutsu. Right. Okay. It's okay. I actually answered this question a couple of weeks back, but it was the same question in a different in disguise. And basically, the question is, if I could rephrase it, is why do we use the shinai differently? To why is our tenuchi different with the shinai than it is with the bokken or the bokdo? Some people don't realize that it is, or some people don't think it is, but it is. So right. Which way do we take this? So first off, all right, I take a little bit of issue with the term pushing cut. All right, I don't know what you mean by that because I know literally zero about Katori Shintoryu. I've heard of it. I know there's a different bokken that they use. I think I've seen it in like a documentary a couple of times. I think it's the one where they sort of do this sort of katsugyuwaza type thing. I don't consider it in any way in the context of Kendo because I don't know enough about it to do so. All right. I'm not saying that it hasn't had an influence in Kendo. I'm not saying that it isn't part of Kendo's history. I don't know. I don't really care. So, but right, this term pushing cut. All right, for me, right, this conjures up this idea that I see a lot, this mistake I often see where people sort of make this sort of action when they strike. So I can get that on camera. This sort of action when they strike. And that's not right, all right? It's not, you're not striking like this, right? You do that, you're going to hit the mengane, you're going to bust up your shinai, you're not going to make the sharp strike with sae, right? At least that's what I think, all right? Now, let me caveat this before I go any further, because this is another thing, is the concept of tenuchi and how tenuchi should be. Tenuchi is the way you use your wrists and your hands to strike, by the way, isn't set out by the All Japan Kendo Federation. All right, there's not one definite correct way. Lots of different teachers have lots of different ideas and teachings about this. All right, so this is what I think based on my experience and what my teachers have taught me. I have heard other teachers teach differently, but this is what I think. So this idea of pushing like this, it doesn't result in the correct datotsu, in my opinion. All right, it's not pushing this way. It's pushing. It's striking. I can't get on camera. It's not pushing this way. It's this way. This is the action that you make with the shinai. Men, not men. This way, right? I don't see it as a pushing cut, right? It's this way, not this way. Yeah. First of all, it is different to what we do with the bokken though. All right. And that's because with a bokken, we use a bokken in kata in the similar way as one might use a Japanese sword. But a shinai is not a Japanese sword, and it is not supposed to be a replacement for a Japanese sword. And we're not supposed to use it in the exact same way as we would use a Japanese sword. So with a shinai, our tenuchi is more this way. Pam, 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 this way. With a bokken, this way. Yeah? If we did this one in kata, you're going to get hit on the head. All right? It's just not how you would use... I don't think that's how you would use a Japanese sword. If you were actually going to try and cut something. I'm not saying you couldn't cut something with it. Before someone posts that video of the guy doing the tameshigiri with the like saying if you can use the katana for kendo waza or something. I've seen that as well. Yeah, you can cut up mats with a katana using kendo techniques. Yeah, I know that. But look, kata exists in part for us to retain and learn from the roots and the history of kendo. All right, and for that reason, we use the bokken in a more similar way as one might use a sword, a Japanese sword, than when compared to how we use a shinai. All right. I don't know if that answers your question, but this is Kendo Rant, and I just rant. Okay, next one. Are we likely to see you modeling this in any of your instructional videos anytime soon? And there was a link to the new white Kendogi and Hakama set that we just put up on KendoStar, the white one. I posted a picture of me wearing a white Kendogi and Hakama. That picture's from a few years ago. It's like 5 or 6 years ago now, actually. But I'm not averse to wearing a white Kendogi and Hakama. I'm probably not going to wear it in the instructional videos, but you know, I have a white Hakama and Kendogi set. Haven't worn it in a while. I used to wear it more before I had like a good synthetic set. I mean, I like wearing the navy blue one. I think I personally like it. So now that I've got a navy blue one, the kati that is easy to look after and wash, I just wear that all the time instead. And the white one, it gets stained by the blue borg and stuff, so it does my head in a bit. So I prefer, yeah, I just wear the kati almost all the time when I'm practicing. Next one. Hi, Andy. Do you have any advice for someone who just became senpai in the dojo? And second question, what is the difference between a dobari shinai and a junki shinai? Okay. So, just became senpai in the dojo. It depends on what context you use the word senpai in your dojo. Senpai is, technically, it's just anybody that's sort of senior to anyone else. So the easiest way to look at that is anyone that's joined the dojo before you is your senpai, and anyone that joined after you is your kohai, and to them you are their senpai. That's the easiest, sort of most usual way. But sometimes you use the term senpai to talk as the person that's sort of leading the gore. That's the commands at the start of practice, like line up and sit down and, you know, mokuso and all that sort of thing. Cool. Either way, it doesn't matter. If you just, you know, if you find yourself in the position where you are a senpai in either context or both, the best thing you can do is just practice kendo earnestly and honestly. Try to be a good example, but without trying to be a good example. If that makes sense. I mean, you know, it's a bit cringe, innit, if you're like a bit over the top with that. So just try your best at kendo. All right, be nice, be polite to people. It's nothing to do with whether you're a senpai or not. You should be doing that anyway. Try your hardest in practice. Be open to giving advice when asked, though don't necessarily push it on others, like I say, unless they've asked you for it. And that's about it. In terms of your question about the shinai, dobari shinai and junki shinai. So, okay, first off, junki is our brand of dobari shinai. All right, so junki is our brand of shinai at KendoStar. All right, and the two words that are often interchangeable are dobari and jisen gata. Okay, jisen gata, and I think we use both words on the product description of junki. It depends. essentially, right, the door of the shinai is the bit near the hands that's like a little bit swollen. That's the door, and door body means it's swollen there. All right, and jissengata means that it's yeah, we use the word door body jissengata. That's so we pick up the search results and stuff. It's pretty much the same thing, really. These days, so essentially it means that it's kind of large or swollen in that area near the hands, near the tsuba, and then it goes to a kind of thinner tip. All right, and that's particularly, if it's quite not extreme, but if it particularly is a sort of representative of that shape, then yeah, jissengata is appropriate to use for it as well. The opposite style of shinai would be like a kodo style shinai, which is where it's sort of more straight along the whole sort of shape of the shinai. It's all about the balance, really. If you've got a door body shinai or jissengata shinai, the balance is nearer the hands and the tip feels lighter, but you sacrifice durability because the tip's thinner. The koto or chokdo is sometimes called. It's just a straight shinai, and the balance is more evenly distributed. You get a bit more durability, but you get a little bit of a more it doesn't have quite the sort of same balance. It feels a little bit heavier at the tip. Some people describe that as feeling similar to a Japanese sword because the balance is evenly distributed, which, it's accurate as much as a shinai can be. And then, of course, you've got sort of all-purpose models, which are sort of somewhere in between the two. Last one. How are the plastic mouth guards working out? Any reports of them breaking or popping out during practice? So, yeah, I mean, obviously, Kendo has been sort of a little bit sporadic around the world for the most part. But I mean, the only, we've had the reports on the mouth shields, these plastic things that go in front of here, obviously, as part of the things people are doing to facilitate Kendo practice under the current situation. Yeah, I mean, everyone seems to really like them. I've used them quite a lot. No problems at all. Not heard of any popping out or breaking or anything like that. I don't think you'll see that with those. The eye shields, I don't rate, to be honest. For that reason, I think they are liable to popping out and breaking. But the mouth shields are made from a different type of plastic, and they don't seem to break. Fog up a little bit, but after a few minutes of practice, you don't really notice that. So no, I think they're all right, actually. And I don't mind them so much, to be honest. And it wouldn't bother me if we keep those for a while. There's a kind of hygiene issue as well, isn't there, with the sort of spit flying out and stuff. It's quite good for that. So yeah, be interesting to see how that pans out. That's it. Thank you for joining me today. Don't forget, like, share, subscribe. You've got to hit that Kendo bell that comes up after you've hit subscribe. A button comes up, is a bell. That's called the Kendo bell. You ring that, you get better at Kendo. It's a proven fact. Don't forget, support the channel by shopping at KendoStar.com, and I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.